the data from border authorities in the U.S. clearly shows that our border, when it comes to fentanyl, it's a fraction of the seizures that are happening overall at both borders. Were you making those points when you were talking about the border? Because the way that you've communicated around it seems to accept the characterization of the U.S., which is not based in fact.
Well, it's not helpful to tell the Americans, well, we've only provided you a supply that would kill 9.5 million Americans. That's not a persuasive argument, and I think we should stop using it. I think we need to understand Canada's problem is different. Canada had a big problem with TD Bank acting as a money launderer. They got a $3 billion fine. We've had our casinos in British Columbia act as money laundering. We have the issue of not actually examining containers when they come in on our ports. We don't examine every car that comes across the border. We have cars being stolen and stuffed with drugs and sent outside of Montreal ports. We've got packages coming across the border through Amazon that go unchecked. So just because we haven't found it, maybe it's because we don't have the processes in place to be able to find it. Maybe that's what the Americans are raising. And now we have an opportunity to address that because our people are dying too. And we shouldn't be complacent about that. We should want to work with them in our own interest to be able to stamp out the cartels as well.
Yeah, and I certainly don't think anyone's advocating for complacency. And I think even in, for the benefit of Canadians, which I think something you and other premiers have said, like there's nothing wrong with addressing the fentanyl issue. But and I take your point about not saying, well, only X amount of people are dying, but that takes away completely from the factual basis. Like, he wants to punish us in the same way he's punishing Mexico, predicated on some sort of pretext around the border when it doesn't exist in the same way. Why don't you want to make that argument at all?
He wants us to recognize that Canada enjoys a very special relationship with the U.S. that no other country in the world enjoys, and just show the respect of taking seriously the fact that they've got people dying and they want it to stop. That's it. We should stop making excuses, stop saying, yeah, but we're not as bad as the other guys. We should just say, yes, we agree. And we're going to take care of our part of the issue so you don't have to worry about us anymore. So that's all I would say, is that what he's observing is that things are a lot worse than they were last time he was in, that things are going in the wrong direction. We've got to reverse that. So I would say no excuses. Let's just work on that. And then hopefully 30 days from now, we'll have made enough progress that we can move on to some of the other issues.
Why are presenting facts, though, excuses? Like the way you're describing it is just accept the way President Trump characterizes things and kind of roll over. I'm not sure Canadians would be comfortable with that. I don't see any value in, and I'm not saying dismissive. Like, I'm not saying be dismissive. I don't think Canadians want to be dismissive of the fentanyl crisis, which is a crisis on this side of the border as well. But the idea that President Trump is describing, what comes into the United States as responsible for the numbers that he's put out there, like, again, the facts don't bear that out. Why are you unwilling to concede that?
Well, because we haven't done the analysis yet. Let's examine every package. Let's examine everything, every container coming into our ports. Let's examine every truck coming and going in our country. And then we would be able to say, okay, we feel confident that it's not us. We can't say that right now because our people are dying too. And so the fentanyl's coming from somewhere, the precursor drugs are coming from somewhere. We think that we need to make progress on fentanyl so that we don't end up seeing the 25% tariffs come back. And we need to make progress on the things that are irritating to the Americans, the digital media tax, the banking industry, telecom, supply management. Those keep coming up, but those can only be resolved in the context of a broader renegotiation of the Canada-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement. And that's not scheduled to be done until 2026. So we need an election. We can't have one prime minister start those discussions, a second prime minister carry it a few yards, and then a final prime minister negotiate it. We'd be much better off solving the issue around fentanyl so that it doesn't come back with high punitive tariffs, and then getting an election so that we can get someone at the table to do the brass tacks negotiation for the next 4 years.
There will be an election, though, before those negotiations are supposed to start in earnest.
I sure hope so. I mean,
well, there will be.
As we all know, there is the ability for a new prime minister to try to negotiate a new deal with either the Bloc or the NDP to stay in until October. We also know our Constitution allows for an election that could be held as late as October 2026. I think that would be very damaging to the country. I just want to make sure everyone knows my view. Let's get a new leader in place in the Liberals, and let's get to an election right away. If they win, then we know who is at the table for the next 4 years. If it's somebody else, then let's get that resolved.